Okay, I hear there's a little bit of trouble determining atrial rates and determining ventricular rates, so I just wanted to go over a couple of examples, or at least one example from the book, and I'm just picking strip 8.47 from the book, and this is in chapter 8. So going through the 5 steps, you want to just look at the regularity of the rhythm. So we'll have a quick peek at the peaks of the QRS complexes. And you'll see that the distance from here and here and here and here, even eyeballing it without actually marking the RR intervals, this is irregular. Okay, so the ventricular rate is irregular because the ventricular rate goes in accordance with the ventricular depolarization, and that's represented by the QRS complexes. So you can see the distance, or the RR intervals, are irregular for the ventricular rate. So the ventricular rate is irregular. So if we look at the example again, we can be looking at P waves. So that's the next step, is to analyze P waves. So we do have some nice positive round P waves here. And then we also notice that we have a P wave in a QRS complex and a P wave in a QRS complex, and then a P wave missing something, a P wave complex, P wave complex, P wave missing something, P wave complex, P wave complex, P wave complex. So because I have some P waves without complexes, and well, I'm also in chapter 8, but if I have P waves without complexes, you got to automatically be thinking about blocks. Okay, so I'm thinking blocks. But what I'm going to do is have a look at the P waves, and I'm going to mark out the P waves on the edge of my piece of paper that I have here. And it's okay if you do not, like I posted another video before, if you're not seeing all the P waves and you miss a few, that's okay. Don't worry about it, because we will map through and find them. What you need to do though is when you're marking on your piece of, or your edge of piece of paper, you need to pick the same point on the P wave. So if you're going to go with the peak of the P wave, or the top, you just need to make sure that you're marking it, you know, center where the peak is, and line them all up in the same. So when you make your marks, you make your marks to the center. If you want to use the beginning of the P wave, that's fine. If you want to use the end of the P wave, that's fine too. Just make it consistent. Every time you mark your P wave, that you put your marking, you know, I'm trying to hit the center of each one of those P waves. Okay, so in terms of these markings that I have on my piece of paper right now, they all look pretty even. I'm just going to take the first P to P interval, not the RR interval, but the P to P interval, and I'm just going to pull it along the strip just to make sure. So that's pretty close. I'm going to slide it around across the whole strip and check. That one might be a little touch shorter there. Here again, those line up pretty good. These two P waves line up pretty good. This one is also very good. This P to P is okay. This P to P is also okay. So actually the P to P intervals are regular. Now, since the P waves represent atrial depolarization, and then hopefully after depolarization is contraction, then we can say the atrial rate here is regular. So the same rule applies. If you have an atrial a regular atrial rate, then you can use the 1500 method to calculate heart rate. So if I line this up, the first interval here, which is the P to P interval, line it up on a piece of section of the graph that you can see that 5, 10, 15, so I'm anywhere from 19 to 20 small squares. Okay, so if I use my 1500 rule, at 19, that's 78.9. So 75. So my atrial rate by 1500 method is 75 to 79 beats per minute. No, we're not really talking about beats per minute, but we're talking about an atrial rate, okay, because we don't get a pulse when the atrial contracts, when the atrium contracts. Okay, so forget this piece, but you're about 75 to 79 in terms of your atrial rate. Now, ventricular rate, we said that we said that this was irregular. So when we have an irregular rhythm, we count the number of QRS complexes included in the 6-second strip and then determine the heart rate with a rapid rate calculation. So here are the hashings for, or the markings for 3 seconds here and here. So I'm going to count all the complexes within the 3-second strip. So this guy's out if I line it up. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if I just check the last one, this QRS complex is also out. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 complexes in 6 seconds times 10. That's 50 beats per minute. So that's your ventricular rate. Okay, so hope that helps. Thanks, everybody.